Okay, welcome back everyone for our Parsha Insight special post Yom Kippur edition. And we are very fortunate to have a Torah portion this week. This is the last one of the year, at least the last Parsha of the year before we get to Breshit, which will happen after Simchat Torah, because the following Shabbat is going to be Chol HaMoed Sukkot, and then we get to Simchat Torah when we finish the last Parsha of Zot HaBracha. So this is the last Parsha Insights of the book of Devarim. Next time we meet, we'll be talking about Bereshit. So that's very, very exciting. So there will not be a session, just point out there will not be a session on Sukkot, but rather we'll meet right after Simchat Torah. So we're going to be skipping 1 week for a variety of reasons, including the fact that there's no Parsha that week. So the calendar gives us a little bit of a 1 week break, and then we'll come back for Bereshit. So let's jump right into it. We have, I think, a very interesting parsha and a very interesting midrash that I want to look at. A fascinating story. The midrash gets a little bit long-winded, and we're not going to read every word inside, but we'll do a little bit outside, and we'll take a look together. So here we go. Haazinu hashamayim va'adabera v'tishma haaretz imrei fi. The parsha begins with reference to the heavens and the earth. Give ear, O heavens, let me speak. Let the earth utter. Let the earth hear the words I utter. And so what the midrashim and the commentators are going to note is, why is Moshe addressing heaven and earth? What's happening here that Moshe is suddenly always talking to the people, and suddenly he goes into deep poetic language and starts to talk about heaven and earth, hashamayim v'haaretz. And many of the commentators talk about the order. Why does the shamayim come before the aretz? Why does the heaven come before the earth? And so on. We're going to take a look at two sources, two midrashim on this one verse, addressing the very simple question of heaven and earth, of why is it heaven, why is it referenced as heaven, why is it referenced as earth, why are we bringing in these two concepts at this particular point in time? So here we go. So this is the Sifrei Midrash on Devarim says, "Shelo asu kol mitzvot shenamim min hashmayim v'lo asu kol mitzvot shenamim min haaretz." Moshe appointed two witnesses, heaven and earth, telling them. Okay, so we're starting here. Moshe ha'id b'Yisrael shnei edim. So he appointed two witnesses, telling them, "I am flesh and blood. Tomorrow I will die." If they wish to say, so what Moshe is saying is basically a universal human truth, which is that we're not here forever. Moshe is not only speaking about himself, but this is a reality that we all walk around with, which is that we have a sense of mortality. And we're always looking for that glimpse of eternal life. If there's something we can get that will give us a little bit of eternity, that's to our benefit. That's to the world's benefit. So Moshe is no different. He's saying, look, I'm flesh and blood. Tomorrow I'm going to die. If they wish to say they never received the Torah, who will come and refute them? So he's saying, if people are coming, if the world comes, what's going to happen? Im yirtzu lomar, if they want to say, Loki, that we didn't receive the Torah. And if Israel says, we never did this, what are you talking about? We're responsible to do the Torah. We never received it. What are you talking about? Anybody alive who was there? Any of us who were around at Mount Sinai? So why should I be involved with the Torah if no one was there? So therefore, God appointed them two witnesses that live forever. And that's the heaven and the earth. The sun will be witness for them below, and I above. Okay, the sun will be witness for them below, the heaven and the earth. That's the concept. So very simply, the Sifrei is saying you have the eternal nature of the heaven is always there, the earth is always there. They're going to be the witnesses that you have these responsibilities. That's a very straightforward quote of the Midrash. There's a very different approach that's taken by the Tanchuma. And I think this is a very powerful idea. Lilamedcha. This teaches you Shehakadosh Baruch Hu Yitbarach Shemo, that God, may His name be blessed. Pa'amim nirev u'pa'amim eino nirev. That sometimes you can see God, and sometimes you can't see God. Pa'amim shomea u'pa'amim eino rotzeh lishmoa. Sometimes hears, sometimes doesn't want to hear. Pa'amim oneh u'pa'amim eino oneh. Sometimes God answers, sometimes God doesn't answer. Pa'amim nidrash u'pa'amim eino nidrash. Sometimes God is requested or wanted, sometimes not wanted. Pa'amim matsui, pa'amim eino matsui. Sometimes you can find God, sometimes you can't find God. Famim karov, famim eino karov. Sometimes God is close, and sometimes God is not close. So the question I have for you, this is Midrash saying sometimes God's here, sometimes God's not. Right? That's basically sometimes, and sometimes. What does this have to do with the heaven and the earth? How is this connected at all? And this is a Midrash on this, and there's I think a very beautiful insight that explains this, but what does this have to do with heaven and earth? And an answer that I saw, which I thought was very beautiful, is heaven and earth are not the same thing from our perspective. What are the heavens? The heavens, one imagines in a very physical way, the heavens are the sky. The earth is the ground. The earth is always there. You can always go outside and look down, and you're always going to see the earth. Will you always see the heavens? Can you always see the sky? There's cloud cover. Sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. And so that is the Midrash in saying, you know what? God is going to be sometimes like the earth, which is close, and sometimes like the heavens, which is far. Sometimes you're going to be able to see God whenever you want, and sometimes you're going to have some type of distance, some type of separation between you. That's why it says heaven and earth, because those are the two aspects of our relationship with God. One is very close, one is very far away. Any thoughts on this Midrash before we move forward? Okay, let's take a look at the next verse, because here is the extended Midrash, which I really love, which I thought was really interesting. So the verse says, again, in the song of Haazinu, further on in the song of Haazinu, Yimtsa'ehu be'eretz midbar, God found them in a desert region. Uvetohu yalel yeshimon, in an empty, howling waste. Yevonanehu yitzrenu, God engirded them, God watched over them. Yitzrenu ki ishon ino. Yisovavenu, God engirded them. Yevonanehu, God watched over them. Yitzrenu ki ishon ino, God guarded them as the pupil of his eye. So what do you think that phrase means? That last phrase is what I want to focus on. God guarded them, guarded us, as the pupil of his eye. What does that mean? And the Hebrew is no clearer than the English. I think the English is a pretty good rendering of it. God guarded them as the pupil of his eye.
Does that refer to maybe to the fact that we are the chosen people?
I believe
in
that
his
you're
eye?
correct, that the whole verse is predicated on that understanding, that God is paying special attention to this people. He protects them, he watches over them, like the pupil of his eye. Let me ask a secondary question. The phrase in English, "You are the apple of my eye," what does that mean?
Very special to me.
What is the apple of the eye? What is that referring to?
I just had that. And apples don't fall far from the tree.
Yes. But what's an eye's apple? You ever thought about this? You're the apple of my eye. Does my eye have an apple?
The shape of the apple is round, and the eye itself is round, and the pupil is round.
So
I don't know.
It could be this very thing, that there's the pupil. But then what is it about the pupil? Why are we referencing a pupil?
It's a lot of puns.
A lot of puns?
Because the pupil's what lets the light in. The
Okay.
pupil is what lets the light into the retina.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
Yeah, absolutely.
If the light doesn't come in, you can't see anything.
Right.
That's the crucial part. People look at how restricted or how open the pupil of the eye is. Doctors look at that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that perhaps it could just be that the pupil is a very vulnerable point. There's so much that's depending on the functioning of the pupil, and it's exposed, and more or less we have eyelids, but it's something we need to protect. It's something that needs watching over. If you're how many times you have to put on protective glasses for so many different things. You're walking through a forest and there are branches sticking out all over you. What are you worried about? You're not really worried about getting scratched on your shoulder. You're worried about something poking in the eye.
Your cornea getting scratched.
Yeah, you're worried about, it's very vulnerable.
That's the first thing you do is you raise your arms.
Exactly. You instinctively protect because you know how vulnerable it is. So God is watching over us as something that God instinctively wants to protect. That God knows. And I love, by the way, I love your observation about the light being let in, because I think that's so much of how we see our role as the Jewish people, as allowing the world to access the light, as being that what we call the Or LaGoyim, the light unto nations. That's the idea of the pupil of the eye. There's one issue with this, which the students of Maimonides would have a very serious issue, and I'll just point it out. We'll look at it inside for a moment, but it says Yitzrenu, so God guards them. Ishon, which I assume is the pupil or the apple, as it's going to be translated in other places. Eino. Eino, what does Eino mean?
His eye, Ein Shalo.
Yeah.
Ayin Shalo.
Ayin Shalo, his eye. Whose eye? Whose eye? And so
Who's the them wandering in the desert?
right, Susan, God.
God's eye.
Them.
God's eye.
God's eye.
Yeah, which is very simple, very clear. The only problem is God doesn't have eyes. The only problem is that eyes are a very physical concept. God doesn't need an eye to see. So what are we talking about? God guarded them as the pupil of his eye. And by the way, I cheated here a little bit. The translation, before I clicked the edit button, the translation said God's eye. God guards them as God's eye. But I changed it to his because it really says his eye. And we're going to see in the Rishonim, in the comments, that we have two different opinions. Number one, Nachmanides, Ramban, he kept him as the apple of his eye, alludes to watchfulness. The verse day that God watched over him, over the Jewish people, as he would shield his own eye with a capital H. And then skip down and look at the Sforno. And the Sforno says, just as a man watches carefully over his eyeball after having tended it, so God watched over his people. God tried to surround the Israelites with layers of protective legislation to counter their natural tendencies to be obstinate and to do their own thing. So the Sforno, why is suddenly saying Sforno? This is an allegory. This is just as a man watches carefully over his eyeball. Why did we just change the his to a lowercase? Because Sforno is reflecting the tradition that it can't be talking about God's eye. God doesn't protect God's eye because God doesn't have an eye. And so he's going to say God's going to protect us just like we protect our own eyes. And how does God protect us? With legislation.
God has vision.
God has vision, absolutely. But God's vision is not at jeopardy of being poked out by a stick. God's vision doesn't require that sense of watchfulness to protect it. God's vision no matter what.
We do a lot of I can't remember the word. I'm having trouble from my stroke. What is the word when you anthropomorph? What is the word?
Anthropomorphism is when
you find that in other places where man can relate.
Exactly.
They use terminology that we can understand.
Exactly. That's the phrase. It's in English here that Diber Torah b'lashon b'nei Adam, that the Torah is in human language. Absolutely. Okay, another, so that's just reflective of the debate. God's guarding us as a pupil of his eye. So who is the his? Is it God's eye? Or is it just as we guard our own eyes, so does God protect us? Okay, so that's that debate. There's a midrash, which we're going to spend a few minutes on right now, which I think is a really interesting midrash, because it's an extensive story. We'll read a little bit in the Hebrew. We'll skip a little bit. We'll see how it goes, okay? Because it's a pretty long midrash. Not too long, but pretty long midrash. So Are you ready for story time? Here we go. Yitzrenu ki yishon ino. God protects it like his eye. Hakadosh Baruch Hu notzer livchunav. God protects those who livchunav, those who have chosen him, those who are chosen by him. Ka'adam hanotzer ishon eno. Like a person, like a man protects his own eyes. So he goes according to the Midrash here, and the Tanchuma goes according to the comment of the Sforno. So how does God protect us? That's the question. So now that we've established that God protects us, what does that protection look like? So we're going to tell a story here to demonstrate God's protection. That's what the Midrash does. It's a fascinating story on many, many different levels. But let's start. Umaaseh ba'adam echad is a story about one person. Ashir gadol mikubal. He was wealthy. He was a great person. He was a very well-known person. V'haitalo bat achat. And he had one daughter, Yafat Toar Mod, very beautiful, v'chasida, and righteous. V'nised shlosha pamim, and she got married thrice. Lishlosha b'nei adam.
Times. Wow.
3 times. Lishlosha b'nei adam, to 3 different people. Uv'chol laila rishona shel nisuah, on every first night of her marriage, lemacharat motzim ba'ala met. The husband was found dead the morning after the wedding. Okay?
And this is in the Bible.
And this is in the Midrash.
No, it's in the Midrash. Midrash. not Bible.
Okay.
Should I continue with the story? We've had enough. Okay, let's go on. We need to hear more.
Not a good bet for the
Who
fourth
wrote
guy.
Who wrote this?
This is a compilation from the sages. We don't know exactly who wrote this, but there's a compilation of traditions.
Okay.
It's not authored in that way, but it's from our tradition. Amra, she said, Lo yamutu od bnei adam alai. No one else is going to die because of me. Eshev almana va'aguna. I'm going to sit as a widow and an aguna. We're familiar with that phrase, an aguna, from somebody who can't marry, basically. We are familiar with it because
they won't give up.
withholding a get.
But
here, it's not about the get. He is self-imposing the status of aguna on herself. Ad asher yireha makom virachem, until God has mercy on me, whatever that means. I'm not gonna get married. Yeshva yamim rabim. She sat for many days. V'haya to ashir. Okay, so that's it. So she buries 3 husbands. She's married for a collective total of 3 nights, and buries 3 husbands, and now she is taking a vow. She's not getting married again. V'haya la'oto ish. Now that man had ach anim od, had a brother who was very poor. So this girl has an uncle, right? This man has a brother who's very poor. V'hayula asara banim. He had 10 sons. And every day he and his eldest son would bring wood from the forest, and they would sell it. That's how they made the money. That's how the family supported itself. One time they weren't able to sell. They didn't have the money to buy bread. And they didn't eat that day. And the next day, what was going to happen? They went back into the forest. And the father fainted. He was so weak. He hadn't eaten. He was so despondent. He couldn't support his family. Zalgu enei haben dma'ot. The son started to cry al anyam about concerning their poverty. But tala einav lamarom, and he looked to the heavens. Here her haben belibo. So he started to think. The son started to think. Natal reshut me'aviv u'mimo, and he got permission from his parents. V'halach l'midyat dodo, and he went to the country of his uncle, of the rich uncle. Uchsheba leveito. And when he came to his house, Samach Simcha Gedola, Dodo Alav, his uncle was very happy to see him. V'gam Ishto Bito, and also their wife and the daughter, they're all happy to see. Here's cousin, whatever, from the faraway land. V'shalu lo al aviv al imo v'al banim, and they asked him, how's your family doing? How's everyone doing? Yashavimo Shiva Yamim, so this guest stayed with them for a week. Lasof Shiva Yamim Baha Bachur Dodo, and after a week, he came to his uncle. Amarlo, he said to him, I have one question for you. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. They go back and forth with some niceties. And what's his question? Zot
The Bachur, is he the oldest son? The Bachur, he's the oldest son?
Yeah, this is the eldest son of the guy who lives in the faraway land, now visiting his uncle, aunt, and first cousin, the beautiful girl who's been married 3 times.
Lost 3 husbands, yeah.
What's that? What's that?
Who lost 3 husbands? Who lost 3 husbands? The girl that lost 3 husbands?
Exactly. So now her first cousin now is visiting, and he says, I have one request. He asked of his uncle, Shetiten li bitcha isha, that you give me your daughter as a wife. Kishashama ha'ish, and when the man heard, when the father heard, bacha, he cried. Amarlo al bani al, no, my son. It's not literal, my son. No, my child. No, my nephew. No. Ki ba'avonotai kach midata, because she's being punished for my sins. We don't know exactly what, but he took this very personally. Amarlo, so the young man says, al manat kach. Even so, even knowing the risks, I've fallen in love with her. I would like to marry her. Amarlo, and so the father said to him, very beautiful, he said, Im al iske mamoniata kofetz aleha, if you're after her because of my money, al tisaena, don't. Ani eten lecha kesef v'zahav harbe. I'll give you a lot of gold and silver. Ki ata bachor na'eh v'chacham, because you're a kind and wise young man. Uva'atzati al tistaken ba, don't endanger yourself by getting married to my daughter. Amarlo kfar nishbati al davar hazeh. He's like, my mind's made up. No, I'm going to marry her. It's not about the money. I want to marry her. Ra'aha shir dahadavar v'nitratzelo. So the wealthy man agreed to it. Uvalavito v'siperla tadvarim, and he told his daughter, kishashamazot. And when she heard this, bachta v'tza'aka b'mar nafsha, she cried and she shouted with great agony. V'talta eineha lamarom, and she lifted her eyes to the heavens and she said, oh God, please don't kill all of these just for me. Al yamutu kol ela alai. Please stop the killing. Me'asa. So what did they do? What happened? Kitcha, he betrothed her. Va'asa mishteh, and he made a big feast, and he called all the elders of the city, and they made a big chuppah. It's very exciting, and the groom is sitting there. And now we pick up the story on the wedding day. V'nizdamen lo zaken echad. There was an old man who came up to him, and you know what happened? An old man in the Midrash is never just an old man. Who is it? Eliyahu, Elijah the prophet. And Elijah took a private moment with the groom, and he said to him, my son, I'm going to give you some good advice, and don't deviate from my advice. When you're at the wedding meal, a very poor person is going to come to you wearing black torn clothes. He's going to be barefoot. His hair is going to be like nails, sharp as anything. He's going to be unwashed. He's going to be poor, that there's no one else like him in the world. He's going to be uniquely poor, singularly poor. And when you see him, get up, have him sit next to you, give him something to eat, give him something to drink, and do everything you can and honor him. And don't deviate from what I'm telling with you. V'tisha'er l'shalom, and you will survive. Va'ani elech l'darki, and I will go in my way. That's it. Halach lo hazaken. So the old man left, and that's it. So they sat down for the meal, and when they started to eat, the poor person came as expected, as anticipated. And when the groom saw him, the groom got up, and he did everything that the old man had said, that Elijah had said to him. And then after the meal, that the poor person, the poor man, called to the groom. He brought him into a private room, and he said to him the following: Bani, my son, ani shlucho shel makom, I am a messenger of God. Uvati hine, and I have come here lakachat et nafshecha. I have come here to take your soul.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Amarlo. So the groom said to him, Adoni, sir, my master, tain li zman shana achat. Give me a year. O chatzi shana, give me half a year. Amarlo. He said to him, Lo etein lecha afilu yom echad. I can't give you even one day. Ki kvar higia itcha, because your time has come. Amarlo, he said to him, Bavakasha mimcha, please, hamtein li ad she'elech ve'ekach reshut me'ishti. I need to go ask my wife's permission. Wait a minute. I'm going to go ask my wife. It's a crazy moment. Where I have to go ask my wife if I can die. Hold on a second. Let me just go get permission. He needed permission from his wife. He needed to go basically take leave of his something beautiful here as well. I need to go take leave of my new bride. Amarlo ledavar hazeh esa panecha. So the old man said to him, or the angel of death, disguised as an old man, said, to this matter, I'm going to acquiesce. This is going to be okay. V'lech bo mehera, go and come back quickly. Halach l'cheder, v'yoshevet yichida u'bocha, u'mitpalelet lekona. So he went and he found her sitting alone and crying and praying to her creator. Karaha bachor leha, and the young man called to her. Uvat liftoach lo, she opened the room for him. Ve'hevetu etzla b'cheder, she came. Basically, they held each other, they kissed, and she said to him, Achi, lama bata, what do you have to tell me? Why are you here? Amar la, he said to her, Litol reshut minech. I've come to take my leave of you and get my permission to go. Ki ba'iti lalechet b'derech kol haaretz, because it's my time to go the way of the entire world. It's my time to die. Ki hamalach, because the angel has come and told me. It's come for my soul. And she says to him, no, you're not going to go. You stay here. I'm going to go and speak to him. I love how she takes charge here. I'm going to go and speak to the angel. Let me handle it. Halcha u'matzah, she went and she found him. She said to him, Atah malach shabat lokesh nefesh ishi? Are you the one who's coming for my husband's soul? Amar lahein. He said, yep, that's me. Amralo, she said to him, Lo yamut ata. He will not die now. Why? Katuv b'Torah, because it says in the Torah, Ki kach ish isha chadasha, when a person marries a wife, has a new wife, lo yetzei batzava, he doesn't go out to battle, v'lo ya'avor alav l'chol davar, nothing should happen to him, naki elevato, he should remain available for the needs of the household, shana achat, for an entire year, v'simachet ishto asher lakach, and he should bring joy to his wife that he's married. So doesn't the Torah say that he has to stay for a year? And God is true, and the Torah is true. And if you take his soul, you're going to make the Torah untrue. You're going to falsify the Torah. Doesn't the Torah say that the first year has to be spent, the husband and wife together, and you're here on my wedding day to take my husband away from me? No, just as my husband can't get drafted to war, just as my husband can't be sent away for anything that's not absolutely essential, so too you, dear angel of death, may not take my husband. Im tekabel dvarai mutav, if you accept my words, fine, she says to him. V'im lav, and if you do not, tavo imi lebeit din hagadol, come with me to the big court. Come with me to the beit din, to the heavenly court. I'm going to take you to the heavenly court. Miyad ga'ar hakadosh baruch hu b'malach, and God immediately yelled at the angel, and the angel left. God rebuked the angel. God took the side of the argument of the bride. Balayla shachru yachad achatan v'akala. That night, the bride and the groom were together. Va'aviha kala v'ima, and the father and the mother of the bride. So remember, this wealthy, important person, his wife, bochim b'chadram. They spent the night crying in their rooms. And when they reached midnight, kamu ha'ish va'isha, this man and woman, the parents of the bride, got up, lachin kever lechotnam, to prepare a grave for their son-in-law, kodem sheyale amud hashachar, before the dawn comes. It's an extraordinary. I'm reminded of the 6-Day War, of the stories in the 6-Day War, where they would dig graves all over the towns and public parks because they thought they were going to run out of room because they were being attacked from all sides. They expected, or they were prepared for the worst. Kishakamu, and when they got up in the morning, whenever we got up, shamu hachatan v'akala, they heard the bride and groom misachkim usmechim yacha. They heard them being playful and laughing together. Nichnasu lacheder l'rotza davar, and they went and they saw the bride and groom ra'u v'samchu They were so happy. V'hodiu hadavar lakahal, and everyone learned about this story. V'hodu l'Hashem, and they thanked God. V'zehu, and this is what it means. Shehakadosh Baruch Hu notzer habotchim bo, that God protects those who trust Him.
Oh, nice.
That's a beautiful story,
That's a
really.
powerful story. So what do you make of it? What's the lesson?
Wow. You got to fight for what you want. You got to keep on hoping, and you have to trust that something good is going to happen. Wow.
That God protects. So step back. How did God protect anybody?
Because she went and argued the case. First, she went to the old man and said, no way.
Yeah.
If you believe in the Torah, then he can't even go to war. Allah kama v'chama, you can't take him on our wedding night. Then he says, if you don't accept this, I'll go to the Beit Din. And God, obviously, in other words, she trusted in God. She presented her case and God accepted.
I think another thing too.
That's the trust. That's the trust bitachon.
I think part of the lesson is that God, as the saying is, that God helps those who help themselves.
Right.
This is not a story of people sitting back and waiting for God to save them. This is a story of a woman who has experienced the unimaginable, horrific to think of the pain she has experienced. This is a story of people who, in spite of everything standing in front of them, follow their hearts, follow their love, and as well stand up for what they think is right. I think the moment of God's protection is when she tells her husband, let me take care of it. I got it. I'll talk to this angel of death. We're actually old friends. We've known each other for a long time, me and this angel of death. He's been to 3 of my weddings already. He's not going to ruin a 4th.
Why didn't she do it before then?
It's a good question. That's a good question.
Maybe sometimes you just get to that point where you can't take it anymore and you just do it.
Well, I think there are a few things. I think number one, she never had the opportunity. And why did she never have the opportunity? Because the angel of death just took her husband. Why did the angel of death not take her husband here? Because he had an exchange with him. Why did he have an exchange with him? Because Elijah the prophet came to warn him and said, treat this person nice, you're going to have a conversation with him. And maybe that's why that poor person, the angel of death, maybe that's why he granted him the ability to go speak to his wife for a moment, because that's really what changed. Any one of these details don't happen, the whole story falls apart. You need the conversation between the husband and wife to happen in order for the wife to save the husband. In order for that conversation to happen, you need the husband to be able to take leave of the angel of death for a moment to talk to his wife. In order for him to take leave of the angel of death, he needs to treat the angel of death nicely so that the angel of death is going to grant his wish. In order for him to treat the angel of death nicely, he needs to be warned by Elijah the prophet to treat the angel of death nicely. In order to be warned by Elijah the prophet to treat the angel of death nicely, he needs to merit seeing Elijah the prophet. In order to merit seeing Elijah the prophet, he needs to be determined to marry this woman, even though to make the sacrifice to marry this woman, even though it doesn't make sense, even though her father begs him not to, even though if her father says, I'll give you all the money in the world, you don't have to marry her for money. So it's his love which propels the entire story. It's his love for her. Not only that, it's his love for his family. The young man is only there because he needs to help his family. He wants to help his poor father who fainted out of exhaustion. He wants to help his younger siblings. He wants to help his mother. There's so much good at the core of this. The rest of the story kind of unfolds in this very interesting way, in almost a supernatural way. But the core of the story is a kid wants to do good by his family, goes to his uncle, falls in love with his first cousin, as was the norm, wants to marry her, and decides that he's going to marry her in spite of all of the warnings. And then everything kind of flows from there, and the story becomes very, so God's protecting those, God's protection is earned. I think that's part of the lesson of this midrash.
Yeah. You can't marry your first cousin.
absolutely
They
can.
did. A lot of people did.
Look we just finished Yom Kippur. They gave all the prohibitions and things that you can do in the
It's absolutely permitted
readings.
in Judaism.
Really?
Yeah.
In the Jewish religion, but not in.
Oh, yeah.
I don't.
You
I
can't
believe-
marry a
I
first.
believe-
I think
Anybody?
it's. I think you can. It's just, I think it's the first of brothers and sisters, parents and children. First, what do they call it? First, I forget the
And
word, but
even a stepchild.
Generation, no, not
Yeah,
generation.
I don't know the
I
civil
thought that you couldn't do that.
aspect, but
Not in Saskatchewan, you couldn't. You could never marry your cousin. That's where I grew up.
yeah, I'm not sure.
It's allowed everywhere else.
Certainly the norm in the Bible.
In every religion,
Yeah,
I don't know.
in every religion, it's allowed.
I don't know of any place that it's not allowed.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that.
That's why there's so many
What we
different
wanted to look at today in this.
Well, does that not? Yeah.
What's that?
Anyway, it's inbreeding. It's inbreeding. I don't get it.
Yeah, look, any other issues associated with that, it can be explored in their own merit from a Torah.
Okay. Listen. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
From a halachic perspective, it's a normal thing to do in these stories, in the Talmudic stories, in the Torah. A very, very normal thing to do. So in any event, the Haazinu hashamayim va'adabera, the difference between the heaven and earth, and the concept that earth is always there, heaven, you need to look closer to see it. And maybe that reflects a little bit about our relationship with God, that sometimes God is very close, sometimes God is distant. We have the anthropomorphism and the challenges of looking at God as having an eye and having a pupil or the apple of God's eye to protect, looking at some of the tensions that exist amongst the commentaries, and at this fantastic midrash, which tells a very elaborate story of a tragic woman who loses 3 husbands on her successive wedding nights, but ultimately is so determined to be married and to find love that she's able to argue against the angel of death and emerge victorious. And that is God protecting those who trust in God. So we have
Midrash Tanchuma.
beautiful insights. And with that, we'll conclude today's session. We'll see you in a few weeks. We're going to talk about Bereshit right after Simchat Torah. So we're going to skip a week and then come back in 2 weeks.
Can I talk to you for 1 second?
Absolutely. Well,
First of all, yesterday was a profound spiritual experience. I thank you and your clergy, everybody.
it was our
It was
pleasure,
unbelievable,
honor to
beautiful.
serve this amazing community.
I totally, I mean, you were wonderful, all of you. Thank you. And I would like to make a very quick suggestion. I would like to, and if you want me to help you with it, I can write or whatever. I think that something should be written about the etiquette of attending shul. When you can walk down the aisle, when you can leave your seat, when you can't leave your seat, observing your seating. Some lady said she wanted to sit in my seat because her husband was beside her on the other side. And I said, well, but this is my seat and that's my husband. So, I mean, but anyway, but
we can talk. We can certainly talk offline about that. That's a beautiful suggestion, and anything that can make the service better.
And then put it in the bulletin. Yeah, everybody should understand the rules.
Beautiful.
Like during Kedusha, you can't talk and you can't walk in and out type of thing. Also should be included.
And be respectful of what's going on. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I'll just take a step back and say, they call some things first world problems. The problems of having too many people want the same seats. We are so blessed. And I want to reflect on an amazing Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And for many, many years, we should be blessed with too many people and with seats that are filled, because there are many communities that I shouldn't say it, like this, but there are many communities that would have loved to have what we had in that sanctuary, that miss their people, that haven't gotten their people back. just yet, and we all have to work so hard to make sure people are continue to want to be there, and that's our constant challenge and battle, and we're going to continue to work hard. But I hear in what you're saying a blessing, and that's why I said on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, I said that, and I said, there was a time 2 years ago when we missed the noise, and when we missed the chatter, and when we dreamed of having decorum issues. Halavai, we were closed for Yom Kippur 2 years ago, closed, geschlossen,
Yep.
everything, like no one, absolutely not one member of the congregation in that sanctuary. And fast forwarding 2 years, and you're telling me that there were some issues with people and noise and not knowing when to come. Baruch Hashem.
Yes,
Thank God.
that's a
We're gonna-
very big thing that,
and we'll work on these issues. And you're right. We need to improve these, and the
Just a
experience is
set of manners.
wonderful for everyone. Yes, and we will work on that. But let's do that offline. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
Rabbi, Midrash Tanhuma, what century is it from?
I don't know offhand, but be happy to take a look, and we can do a session on the different midrashim. As to
Beautiful.
exactly when they come from. I know it's a later midrash, but I don't know exactly when.
So it's later than Pikei de Rabbi Eliezer and a lot of the other ones?
I don't know. I don't know offhand. We could take a look at that.
Okay.
Okay, wishing everybody a Shabbat Shalom, a Shana Tova, a Chag Sameach, all the best, and we'll meet back here for Bereshit.
thank you very
Okay. Okay.
much.
Take
Bye.
care.
Good.